Hi everyone, and welcome to the Early Career Astronomer Online Discourse series. This is the event number 20, and it is organized as part of the activities of the IAU Junior Members Working Group. I am Giovanni Sabatini, one of the members of the Executive Committee of the IAU Junior Member. I'm postdoc at INAF, the Astrophysical Observatory of Arcetri in Italy, and today I will serve as moderator for the event. So we have the great pleasure to host Professor Catherine Walsh from the University of Leeds. And Catherine is an astrochemist. Her research focuses on the study of the formation of molecules in a wide range of astrophysical environments, from the interstellar cloud to protoplanetary disks and planetary atmosphere. She is also an expert in developing and then comparing high spatial and spectral resolution observations with modern astronomical facilities like ALMA, with state-of-the-art theoretical models of star-forming regions and protoplanetary disks. So in this context, Catherine is one of the co-PIs of molecules with ALMA at planet-forming scales, which is the ALMA MAPS large program that is which investigate the chemistry of planet formation on spatial scales that are similar to the size of our solar system. Catherine is also the PI of the cost-action The Birth of Solar System, which is the cost-action planets. That is a multidisciplinary network of more than 300 scientists designed to investigate how stars like our Sun and their surrounding planetary systems are formed, combining experiment, modeling, and astronomical observations. So in 2020, she was awarded the prestigious Research and Innovation Future Leaders Fellowship from UK. For her work simulating potentially habitable environment beyond the solar system. And given her extensive involvement in several huge and ambitious programs, today we have the pleasure to hearing Catherine's personal perspectives on maintaining a good work-life balance in academia. So I will leave the floor to Catherine. Catherine, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. And it's really nice to be here today to talk to you all. I was intrigued actually as to why I was asked to talk on this topic, but I have a little inkling as to why. So as Giovanni says, I wear many hats and have a number of leadership positions. And I mean, I'm able to do all of that whilst also making sure I go home in the evening and I do fun things also at the weekend. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about my journey, both into academia, where I tell you a little bit about my story of how I ended up where I am today. And then I'll move on to talk about some of the strategies that I have for making sure I stay on top of things, and also what I think we should be measuring when we think about success in research. So we often don't talk about where we come from in academia, so I'm actually going to start with my story, and I'll tell you where I come from. So I was born in Belfast, which is the capital of Northern Ireland. So here we have the UK, which is in the northeast of the Atlantic Ocean. And here you see Northern Ireland is in the northeast of the island of Ireland, and I was born in Belfast. But I actually grew up in quite a small town. That small town was called Antrim, not too far away from Belfast. Not a very busy place, small market town. That's on the shores of Lough Neagh. So it can be quite a pretty place. So this is a nice photo that I found of my hometown that someone took on and put on Instagram when the snow fell. And it's in this quite nice area of Ireland. So this is the largest freshwater lake in the British and Irish Isles, Lough Neagh, and where I grew up is this little town here called Antrim. So when I went to school, because we all start our academic journey kind of in our schooling, especially in our secondary schooling. So I had the great privilege of going to what's called a grammar school. So these are schools in the UK and Ireland that are academically selective. So you do an exam called an 11 plus, as it was at that time. And if you pass that exam, then you get into the grammar school. And they were very academic and studied and taught very academic subjects. I took a bit of a liking to science when I was at school, although kind of I would say that in my hobbies, I was more into music and reading and literature, which is quite interesting. But certainly from an academic perspective, I always enjoyed maths and I was very, very interested in science. So I actually took biology, chemistry, physics, and maths in my A levels that I did when I was 18. And I actually got a B in my A level physics, which looking back on, I think is quite interesting given where I am today. So I did my A levels back in the 1990s. I was actually the only girl in my A level physics class. And you can see here this famous image from the Solvay conference back in 1927. So it's interesting when you look at the demographics, of physicists, of people that wanted to do physics and had professional careers in physics in that time. Actually, not very much had changed, I think, from 1927 to 1997. I have to say that it was challenging to be the only girl in the class. I think there was about 25 of us. And I worked very hard for that B in physics as well. So although it's my lowest grade, it's something I'm actually quite proud of. So once I kind of done my schooling and I knew I liked maths and science, I didn't really know what I wanted to do at university. I was 18 years old. It was kind of the late 1990s. I just didn't really have a clear career path in mind. I dabbled a little bit with thinking about going into medicine. We were always pushed to go to university at school, so it wasn't really discussed with me that there might even be an alternative to go into university. So that was really the only discussion that I remember really having with teachers at that time. The school did have a careers advisor, and I had a little chat with them. And given that I liked physics and maths, I actually ended up going into mechanical engineering. So this is when I was 18. And I left Northern Ireland and I went to live in Manchester. And I actually started that degree. This isn't me, by the way. This is just a stock image that I found on the internet of a woman doing mechanical engineering. So I did that at UMIST, which is quite ironic, and I'll tell you, I'll tell you a little bit about why that is later. Which is now merged with the University of Manchester, so it's now part of that bigger university. So I went and did mechanical engineering. That was quite an intense course. Lots of engineering related courses, lots of computing, even at that time in the 1990s. Lots of maths, lots of practical work as well, especially working in the labs and the manufacturing labs. But I didn't really enjoy it. I just find it quite frustrating, actually. I liked the maths bit because they were very familiar to me from what I did in school. I enjoyed some of the computation, especially kind of the computer-aided design and computer-aided drawing. I thought that was very good. But I wasn't really practically minded, so I found lectures on gear ratios and how to manufacture things using different materials just a little bit dry, and I felt like I was left quite frustrated, especially in topics such as material science, where we didn't really learn about why different materials have different properties. So I didn't actually complete that degree. And I effectively dropped out of university, which I think also is quite interesting given the position that I'm in now. So I then kind of floated around for a little bit. I did some interesting jobs while I tried to figure out what I really wanted to do. So I worked for a while in a go-kart center. I actually got very good at go-karting because we were allowed to have a go at the go-karting. It didn't really help me very much with driving a car when I eventually learned to drive about 15 years later. I also spent a little bit of time working for Centrica, which is the owner of British Gas, and that was really just an administrative job. So at that time, it wasn't really possible to do anything, you know, higher level without a degree. So I was kind of trapped a little bit in administrative and PA style jobs. But the last place I kind of ended up before kind of moving on to more the journey of where I ended up today was I spent, I think, about a year in the Equal Opportunities Commission in Manchester. And that was a really interesting job. So again, I was an administrative assistant, essentially. So I was helping type letters, answer the phone. I helped to maintain kind of the intranet of the organization, sending information out to people. But it also, I think, really informed the person that I am today because at that time, the Equal Opportunities Commission was mainly an organization which informed on matters of gender discrimination. And a lot of the casework that would come through the Equal Opportunities Commission were obviously women, for the most part, being discriminated against. And the vast majority of those discrimination cases were because women had become pregnant and then had been fired from their jobs, which is illegal and not allowed to happen. So it kind of really opened my eyes, I think, for the first time as a young woman, you know, how women were being treated in the workplace. And I think that, you know, that has kind of informed my involvement in diversity, equality, and inclusion today. But one of the interesting outcomes of working in that job is they actually offered me, I was on a temporary contract and they'd offered me a permanent job. But I wasn't sure. And I always had in the back of my mind that this isn't really what I wanted to do, that I always kind of wanted to go back to science again, because that was kind of where my heart lay. But, you know, I still didn't really know what kind of science or what pathway to take. But there was one significant event that happened in the 1990s, so way before many of you were born. And that was actually the launch of the Hubble Space Telescope in 1990. And I remember, again, in the 1990s, the internet was kind of just emerging. It was being used by organizations, but was finally kind of accessible to ordinary people. The content that was being put on there was starting to become more informative and more accessible. And I remember spending a lot of time looking and just being amazed at these wonderful images of nebula that we were able to take with this telescope. And this is probably the first time in my life I actually thought to myself, there's a possibility to actually study these environments as a, you know, as a future job. Before this, I never really thought or had considered or had discussed with anyone that you know, I could do astronomy and I could be an astrophysicist. So it took me a long, long time. So by this stage, I was in my early 20s probably. And it was really kind of these kinds of images that inspired me to think about, right, if I want to work in this area, this is something that I would like to be possible to happen in the future. What do I need to do and what should I study? So I had a real long think about it. And then eventually my proper journey started. And what I did was I actually went back home. And this happens a lot. We are boomerangs, right? We often like leave and then go back again. And so I went back home and I went back to Northern Ireland. And that was for practical reasons, because at that stage, the UK had brought in tuition fees. So you had to pay to go to university for the first time. Before that, it was actually free. And I decided that I didn't want to be in any more student debt because I already had some debt from my first attempt at university. So I went back home and my mum and dad kindly welcomed me back with open arms. And I lived at home, and then I commuted into Belfast. And I decided to do a joint honours degree. So I decided, right, I'll play to my strengths because I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm interested in. So I went back and I did my primary degree in applied maths and physics. And I started that in 2002. And I was actually quite a bit older than all of the students that were starting with me. So they were all 18 years old, all happy to be out partying, making friends. I was 23 at that time. And you feel it, it's like 5 years today doesn't feel like very much. I'm now in my 40s, and people who are 5 years younger than me, they're also in their 40s. So you don't feel like that's such a different age. But 18 to 23, you go through a lot in life and you change a lot. So I was very sensible. I was like, I knuckled down and I just worked really, really hard for 4 years. I took it really seriously. I was working as well in a part-time job, so I had to be very organized actually to make sure to stay on top of my work, to keep my job going, and stay on top of everything. The really nice thing about doing a joint honours degree was that I actually had a lot of flexibility in the topics that I could study. So I took all the astronomy modules I could, because in the back of my mind, that was still a thing. Maybe I could do this. Maybe this is possible. But I was also really, really interested in atomic and molecular physics, which again is really ironic because weirdly, that's where I ended up today. So sometimes you see these things happening and it's like, interesting that my interest was sparked already when I was an undergraduate student. And like most degree courses, this was mainly modules. There was some coursework, but in your final year, you do a project. And most degree courses have a research project associated with one or two of the final years in the course. And also, really ironically, the research project that I had chosen to do was actually a physics project, not an astrophysics project. And it was on basically molecular physics and theoretical molecular physics as well. So you can see here, this is now quite ironic when you think about what I do now for a living. And this was coming up with, for those of you that might work in chemistry, it was coming up with analytical formula to map the potential energy of molecules. So in this case, it was water. And I started this project. I really enjoyed it. I'd never had any kind of sense of what research was or what research is. I was lucky enough to have a desk and be embedded in this research group, which was the Atomistic Simulation Centre in Queens. And it was a computational project. So it was theoretical. It was working out analytical formulae, but then solving them using computers. Ironic because it's very much what I do today as well. So this was really my first taste of research, and I really enjoyed it. And I did really well in the project and actually got the best mark in the year and kind of won an award for that. And even this work that I did in my master's project made it into this paper. It was kind of going on in parallel. They did actually offer me a PhD in this topic. I thought about it, but in the back of my mind was always, but astronomy, really interested in that. Is there a possibility that I could do a PhD in that? And I actually decided, after a lot of thought, because I had two projects in mind, to jump ship to astrochemistry. And I think there was a couple of reasons why I did that. Number one, astrochemistry, I can still work on fundamental, atomic and molecular physics. That's really what astrochemistry is. It's all about the physics of molecules in particular. But it kind of merged with that in the back of my mind. I'm always interested in astronomy. So to have kind of these two things come together into one topic was just amazing to me because I'd never heard of astrochemistry before I started my PhD. And the other ironic thing was that the year before I was deciding to do my PhD, Professor Tom Miller, some of you may have heard of Tom. I'll tell you a little bit about him later as well. He just joined Queen's the year before, and he's one of the world's leading astrochemists. So it was very interesting that I went on this wiggly path to kind of get to where I am today, but then like the universe aligned and everything happened at the right point for me to end up in this topic. And my PhD research was specifically on the chemistry occurring in protoplanetary disks, as Giovanni said to you, around young stars. And it was really about developing models of the chemistry that's ongoing in those disks. So again, allowing me to kind of further grow skills in kind of computational astrophysics and chemistry as well. So my PhD research is really on some of these big questions that we have on origin. So here you see this really nice schematic where we have molecular clouds that are sitting in the interstellar medium. If they become dense and cold enough, then gravity allows them to collapse into these protostars. And because of the conservation of angular momentum, these protostars naturally create these rotating flattened disks around them. I mean, this is what we call the protoplanetary disk. And of course, this is really important for us because this is where planets form and planetary systems form. And our planet would have formed in a disk around the young sun early in its formation. And these objects are really interesting and really sparked my interest because they are a unique astrochemical laboratory. You find in a protoplanetary disk nearly all of the different combinations of physical conditions that are possible to find in astrophysical objects. The questions that we're addressing when we study these objects are really on origins, like where do we come from? What ingredients were there to seed life on the Earth? Are those ingredients out there elsewhere and found in the disks around other stars? So I really kind of did a deep dive into this topic, and similar to my master's research, I just really enjoyed my PhD research. I found that I was able to work pretty independently, and I just kind of got on with things, and that served me really well. And this is just a plot from my thesis, which also made it into a paper, which is showing you the abundance of formaldehyde, which is a pretty nice tracer of where the molecular material is in protoplanetary disks, and that's a function of the radius away from the star, which is a 0, here, and kind of height above the midplane. And you see this nice molecular layer of formaldehyde, as we call it, in the disk. So my path to where I am today. So I think Giovanni already gave you a little bit of an overview of my CV, but I'll just remind you. So I started in 2002. I had got my master's, undergraduate master's in applied maths and physics. I then stayed on to do a PhD in physics with Tom. I actually also stayed there to do a couple of years of postdoctoral research as well. And that's kind of where my interest in exoplanets started. So planets that are around other stars, because that was about the time that we were starting to detect planets quite readily. Then I moved to Leiden Observatory, where I got a position working in the group of Yvine van Disschouk, who hopefully most of you know, but I'll introduce Yvine in a little minute. And she had a position, she had an ERC grant, so a big European grant to hire postdocs. So I did and over, I wasn't always, I didn't always think when I was a postdoctoral researcher I would end up as an academic staff member, but I really like the thought of going to work in Yvine's group and just having new challenges. So I thought, let's go, let's do that. And then when I got there, Yvine really encouraged me to apply for my own money, which thankfully was successful. So I became an independent research fellow in 2013. So 3 years after I got my PhD. And I've been kind of independent ever since then, so for quite a long time now. And I held that fellowship in Leiden Observatory. Then in terms of like where I am today, 2016, then I moved to Leeds. I started off a position as a university academic fellow, but essentially I was like a assistant professor or a lecturer. So I was doing all of the same duties as a lecturer might do. So I was teaching and taking on different roles within the department, with a little bit of time given to me to kind of maintain the research as well. That fellowship was 5 years long. And then in 2021, 5 years after the beginning, I'm in the position that I am now, which is basically a promotion, so to speak, to associate professor. In 2021, I was also awarded a research grant. This was the first time that I actually was awarded money, which helped me to build a research team. And I'll tell you a little bit about them and what they do as well. So at the moment, I lead a research group here in Leeds, and I'll tell you about all of the other things that I do as well. So I would not be where I am today without the support of excellent mentors. So I've already mentioned the two probably most important people. So Professor Tom Miller, who was at Queen's, he's now retired and he's affiliated with us here in Leeds. And he was actually president of the IA Commission H2, so the Astrochemistry Commission, between 2015 and 2018. And then in Leiden, I worked in the group of Vivien van Disschoek, who was the president of the IAU Executive Committee between 2018 and 2021. So that's a really nice, two really nice links to the IAU. Okay, so what do I actually do today? Okay, so you've heard a little bit of where I started, but now that I have, research grant money, I've been able to expand out a little bit and do a few different things. So I still maintain research, kind of modeling the chemistry of star and planet building material. And you see here another little nice schematic of that cycle of star birth and star death. That helps to seed the interstellar medium with the heavy elements needed to create new stars and new planets. But I've also moved a little bit more into exoplanets as well. And here in Leeds, we have really nice climate models and climate simulations that we are adapting to model the climates of rocky exoplanets, which have climates that are very different to our own. I also do observations. So I started this back around probably 15 years ago now, 2010, 2011. My main instrument I use is ALMA, the Atacama Large Millimeter Array. So this is a big array of telescopes that operate in the Atacama Desert in Chile and operate at millimeter wavelengths and are really, really good at finding and mapping molecules. So I have a line of research also studying the molecular composition of planet-forming disks from the observational perspective as well. And then going back to my master's research, and I also have gone back to look at water, especially in the context of interstellar ices and how other molecules stick to those ices, because that's actually really important for setting the composition of icy material that may make its way into comets, which then may make its way into habitable environments. And of course, I'm not doing all this by myself. I have an excellent team. So I have Javiera, who's a PhD student working with me, and she's doing all the modeling, and I'm helping to guide her in that. I have Felix, who's our exoplanet climate expert. He also is an expert on gas giant planets as well. I have Anissa, who's my in-house computational chemist, who keeps me right and all of the different techniques and methods that we need to use to study ices at the quantum level. And then finally, Lucy is our expert in ALMA. So we have this really nice team, and we have expertise across all of these different thresholds, and we all work really well together. There's been a few other people that I've worked with as well. So previous PhD students are Maria and Christian, who I mentored in Leiden. Maria is a very established scientist in her own right now. She's an expert in comets and observations with ALMA of protostars. Christian has gone over to the corporate world. He works for PwC and probably earns about 5 times more than I do, and fair play to him for that. He really enjoys that role. Alice, who was my first PhD student in Leeds, she's now working at Harvard University as an independent research fellow. Greg, who finished with me a couple of years ago. He was the first exoplanet student that I mentored. He's now a postdoc at Cambridge. And then the most recent graduate is Bing Han, who's literally just finished and is just taking a little bit of time out to figure out what he wants to do next. But he probably will go on to do maybe a postdoc. And then finally, two postdocs that I've mentored as well are John Eiley. He's also an independent research fellow here and lecturer here at Leeds, and also Dr. Marie van de Sande, who's an Earth fellow in Leiden Observatory. So I've tried to make sure through all of my career that everyone that I work with and that I'm working with goes on to hopefully the career path that they would like, and I do my best to support everybody in that. And then my other big hat is the chair of a running cost action. So this takes up a little bit more of my time than I thought it would. Our cost action started off with just, I think, 60 or 70 members and has now grown. We have 330 members really across the world, mainly focused in Europe, because it's a European initiative. It's funded by the European Union. This is a pot of money that we can use to build collaborations, to fund meetings, and fund other networking activities as well. We can also support people to go and present their work at conferences and workshops as well. Cost actions are completely open for anyone to join. So if you work in the areas of planets or planet formation, or even areas that are kind of adjacent to that, star formation, for example, the cost action is open to join, and you just have to go to this website at the bottom of the page here. Okay. So that was a little kind of route through my career, and it hopefully gives you a little bit of a background about where I come from, what I do now, and kind of how I got here. Because again, we never really tell people this. You always just see us in this context. We just appear bloop out of nowhere, and we all have different pathways through life, and we all come from different backgrounds and quite diverse backgrounds. And I think we don't talk about that enough, actually. But now I'm going to change a little bit and talk a little bit more about the practicalities of the role that I'm in. And in particular, talk a bit about the roles and responsibilities that you have and that I have as a member of academic staff. So essentially, what is it that we actually do? And many of you here will get a sense of this, because obviously if you're a researcher, whether you're working at master's or PhD level, there will be overlap with the kind of roles and responsibilities that you have with an academic staff member. I think probably the most visible thing to the rest of the world of what we do is teaching, of course, or what we now call student education. So this is developing, revising, and delivering learning for students, and that can be in the form of lectures. It can be in the form of hands-on activities like laboratories and computational work, and also designing student projects, giving them guidance. So, you know, within teaching, there's a lot going on. We do a lot of marking and assessment and feedback as well. So even just within this one little box, there's actually a lot of like sub jobs that we have to do. If we're in a research-focused university or institution, then we also need to still do research as well as teaching as well. And that's research, like just before I came on to this call, I was actually working on debugging a bit of code written in Fortran that I wrote as well. So I'm trying to figure out what's going wrong with it. We still do hands-on research. We still do hands-on research-led work. You know, I have a paper from one of my postdocs that I have to read and give feedback on. So we still do research and we still lead research. And research leadership also involves things like sustainability, right? Making sure that you have funding to keep your team running. Having that umbrella view, keeping on top of the literature, making sure that the topics and projects that your team are working on are timely and interesting and may have impact in the field. So there's a kind of a lot wrapped into that as well, that one needs to bear in mind. We do a lot of support, and that's not just support for people. It's support for our departments, it's support for the wider university, and it's also support for our wider collaborative networks. Just helping people with whatever they need. And that can be very diverse things. So it could be someone needs a reference letter for a new job that they're going for, or the department needs a volunteer to sit on a panel that's assessing, I don't know, something like the name of the new cafe that we're building in the building. You know, so there's all sorts of these little roles that are just support roles. That also can take time and need to be factored in the job. Kind of linked with that is administration as well. And I kind of, administration is not so much support, it's paperwork, right? So filling in forms, giving people information, reporting, making sure that, you know, for example, you conduct an interview for a new position, filling in all the paperwork, making sure that goes to the right department, making sure they respond to it. So there's a lot of that kind of busy work that's form filling and information gathering and pushing information around in all of the different places that you need to do that. And again, kind of a linked a little bit with that is citizenship. And I think citizenship is a bit different from support. By support, I really mean personal support. You're giving your time up to help. Citizenship is more about helping the community. So citizenship are things like reviewing papers, sitting on review panels for telescopes, acting as an external reviewer for grants, for example. So things that you do that help the community. And very often that is a lot of reviewing once you get to my level. Of course, there's a lot of team management involved, and this is an interesting thing. Nobody teaches you how to be a good manager. It's you're often thrown into the deep end and have to find your feet. And under team management, there's a lot of other subheadings as well. So your role as a manager is to make sure your team is happy and healthy and have all of the resources they need to do their job. And that is a lot of, again, talking to people, meetings, chasing up things with other people to make sure that they're not having to do that. So you do a lot of, you know, there's a lot of support kind of in that role as well. Making sure people are happy and fulfilled, and mainly that they have everything that they need and that they're okay. And part of team management is also being able to help or step in or offer guidance and advice when things are not going okay. And that's often one of the most challenging parts of the job because you're not taught about what to do if things are not going okay. And the university has lots of training on this, which I've availed of. But the toughest parts of the job are really helping people when, especially life throws something at them, and they're not really sure what to do, or not sure how that's going to impact on their ability to do their job and do their research. So there's a lot kind of emotional support kind of locked into team management as well. And kind of again related to that is personal development. So I just mentioned the university here does offer lots of training, lots of training courses. And as I've got more senior, I've started to really take on actually a lot more training because I do want to make sure that I'm doing my job correctly and that I'm being fair and responsible to people. So I tend to do a few courses a year just to make sure that I'm on top of all of that. And then finally, one of the most dry jobs, maybe boring jobs we have is money management, budgeting. We have the responsibility, especially if we are grant holders, to make sure money is being spent responsibly. We have to make sure money is spent, which sounds really strange, but the last thing you want is to have a lot of your grant left over as you come to the end of your grant period. So you need to spend the money and you need to spend it responsibly and wisely. And that also feeds into making sure your team has everything that they need as well, making sure that everybody's well equipped, making sure everybody has the chance to go and travel and visit collaborators or go to meetings. So you have this oversight of the budgets, and it is your responsibility to make sure that you stay within budget and you spend responsibly and openly, and you stay within the rules. So there's all this information that's constantly kind of there in your head that kind of incorporates all of the different things that I'm talking about here. And then I thought it might be quite interesting just to give you a little snapshot of what I've been up to just in the past 2.5 months. It actually gave me a little bit of a heart attack when I looked back at what I did in January and February. But it gives you a sense. So a lot of what I'm going to show you now kind of falls somewhere on that little diagram that I showed. So the first thing I had to do in January when I came back after the break was a coursework and exam marking. And I teach a module, I'm module leader of a module with 80 students. And that is time consuming. That takes a lot of time, care and attention. And that would be placed under the teaching aspect of my job. Then I had to review PhD applications, and we had a lot of applications this year. So we had 60 in total for only 2 places. So that was unprecedented for us, but we had to find the time to do it. And that comes into research leadership, right? Because you're trying to hire the next member of your group, and you want to make sure that that person fits in, has the skills and expertise necessary to work on the research project.
Professor Walsh, sorry, you have 2 minutes left.
I've only 2 minutes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought this is like 45 minutes plus 15 minutes.
Okay, I didn't realize that. I'll skip ahead then.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
Thank you.
Okay. So how do I do it all? So I have some icons. So keep a to-do list, always keep bookkeeping, keep a record of what you need to do and when. You can do that electronically. I carry around a little notebook. Prioritize. So is it urgent? Is it important? If it is urgent and it's important, it goes to the top of the list. And everything else you can prioritize based on those other 2 criteria. Time management needs to be very good. You need to stay ahead of deadlines. Working to deadlines is just very, very stressful. So I always set my deadlines kind of a few days ahead of when I actually need to get things done. And that just means that I always have a little buffer where I know that I can rely on that time if I need it. Saying no is okay, but do be strategic. Say yes to things that would be useful for you to do. Especially if it develops a new skill set or allows you to do something new that you've not done before or that you would find interesting to do. But you don't have to say yes to everything. And that's often a difficult lesson that we all learn early in our careers. Good enough is okay. Perfection is impossible anyway, because what is perfect for you is not going to be perfect for another person. So learn to just be adequate or good, because very often it's very much higher than expectations. And so do your best in the time that you have available, and don't strive for perfection in everything you do. And that saves a lot of time. As a manager as well, and as you move into more leadership positions, you need to trust others. So delegate. If you're in a collaboration, there's no reason that you do everything. Delegate tasks around. And also avoid micromanaging people as well, because that is a big time sink for everyone involved. And because we are scientists and we kind of are detail oriented, this can be a tendency that we can fall into, but it's better to try to avoid that. Take time off because things can wait. I have taken a whole month off before and the world did not end. I came back and everything was as it was before. So we should use our time that we have, take it off and really take it properly off and step away from work, because that refreshes the brain and helps you especially develop new ideas and do new research. And I think a thing that I am very well known for is having very good boundaries. So work stays at work and everything else is outside of work. I don't touch work. And I do this just by having very strict hours. So I arrive in the office between 8 and 9 and leave by 5. I don't work evenings and weekends unless I absolutely have to, and that's very rare. I even leave my laptop in the office unless I have travel. And I also encourage my team to do the same, because you can get everything you need done in a normal working week if you adopt some of these strategies and you are efficient with your time. And everyone is different, so these working hours, these work for me. Different working hours and working patterns might work better for you. But find your way of working, but try not to overwork, only again, if there are times that it's needed. So for example, if you have a deadline and a few extra hours are needed in the evening to polish a proposal, that's fine, but make sure you take that time off at some point in the future. So I think in my last slides, I can just click through. So maintaining good work-life balance is critical for well-being and staying in good mental health. And mental health is health. Not a different form of health, it is health. Okay. It also allows time for maintenance of physical health. And as you know, we get older, and I'm getting older now. This is very important for me. I want to make sure that I'm in good physical health as I get older, and that takes time to plan for exercise. It also creates time and space for self-care, so sleeping and eating well, leisure and social activities and hobbies. And these are all very, very good for maintaining good well-being. And if you already work responsible hours or reasonable hours, you already have that time and space for significant others. And when life events happen, you know, so if you need to look after your kids, or your partner needs you to come home, or your wider family needs your time, or your friends need your time, then it's already there because you are already working in a good working pattern. And the slides that I did skip over because I ran out of time, all of this is not in conflict with being successful in research. We tend to measure success in research with metrics. How much grant money do we have? How many papers did we publish? You know, how many people have we mentored? How many conferences, etc. We count things and we measure that as a success. But I think what is more important is actually just measuring how you're feeling and you're working. So, you know, am I happy and fulfilled? Do I have everything I need? Am I supported? Am I working with good people? Do I have the resources that I need to do excellent research? Do I have the opportunity to go and tell others about my research? And if the answer to all of that is yes, then excellent research will happen, and all those things that we count will all naturally happen as well. So that was all I had to say. So thank you very much. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take any.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Catherine. Wonderful talk. So for the Q&A session, we have decided to do a sort of experiment in order to facilitate the interaction with the speaker. So I'm going to enable the option you have to unmute yourself. And if you have any question, you can just raise your hand and switch on your microphone and interact with Catherine. So Veronica.
Hi, nice to see you, Catherine, and I'm excited to see you, and so we'll catch up in a couple of weeks. But I wanted to ask something that I've asked a lot of professors, which is the question of what counts as work, because I think students, PhD students, postdocs have a lot of ideas about what counts as work, and I have different ideas about what counts as work, you know, in order to try to maintain this mental health and good balance. So I wanted you to see if you can, what I want to say, give details on what, on like, so for our early career folks, what kind of things you would say count as work.
Count as work. I mean, there's all the practical things we do, right? So reading papers, writing papers, running models, analyzing data. I think that thinking is also work, you know, and sometimes if I find the time, I will sit in my office and quietly work by thinking about things. That's probably the thing that's the hardest to switch off. Certainly, because your brain tends to go in different directions. So, I mean, I think there's all the practical aspects around doing research and increasing, scholarship and building skills, and training is also work. Thinking is also work. I mean, I would put, if you are sitting on the bus or the train and you're thinking over, I've got a problem with the code, or I've got a problem with the data analysis, and you're thinking about it, I would classify that as work as well. And I think that that's the hardest one to let go, to switch off. I tend to use distraction techniques. I put on the radio, have voices in my head that are replacing my voice in my head. But I've got pretty good at, when I close the door to my office here, I find it quite easy to switch off now. But that took quite a few years of training, I would say. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of what I would think. Yeah.
That's basically the direction I was going in. That for myself personally, I don't have the work-life balance to be in the office the right number of hours, and I always felt like I was behind in my accomplishments. But so much of my time is just thinking about work and like figuring out problems at night, or sketching, drawing, planning, that kind of thing. And I had never counted that as work until I had a conversation with someone along these lines. And I think it's really useful for everyone to know, like, that is also work. And if you can be in the office your allotted number of hours and close the door on it, that's fantastic as well. But if you can't, then I think we need to let everyone know as well that it is a kind of work. Thanks, Catherine.
It is absolutely. And as I said, that's I would say that when I was younger, I probably did overwork. I probably did do that. That's the right way to say it. And this is one of the worst things that I did. I couldn't, like, switching off my brain seemed to be really, really hard. But as I've got older, I found it easier, and I don't know why, because the pressures are higher, weirdly. Maybe I've just gone into the fatalistic thing of just, it doesn't matter, it's okay. I think you can kind of, with a bit of mindfulness, tell yourself this is fine, this is okay, it's absolutely fine to go home and just do something else and leave it till Monday if you can. Yeah.
So since I don't see any other hands, maybe I can go with my curiosity for Catherine. Since many early career researcher feels, I have the feeling that many early career researchers feel the pressure to work extremely long hours to be competitive, right? So I was wondering, how do you balance the need to be productive and, successful in research with the need to maintain an healthy work balance, especially in the current academic climate?
So I did have this slide. I'm just going to show it. I did say the words, but I'll just show it just to answer the question. I think we're really, really bad as a community in measuring things. We count things. And that's ridiculous if you think about it. You could have somebody who has a minor role in a huge collaboration and ends up on 20 papers in 1 year, but they haven't really done anything, right? Or they've done a bit enough in that collaboration to get co-author acknowledgement, but then you have somebody who's maybe worked in great depth and detail and developed a huge amount of skills and data for 2 years and writes 1 paper on it. So it's like but counting things is not good. And unfortunately, we've fallen into that trap in thinking that numbers of things, and the higher the number, the better. I think we do need to move away from that. And I think funding agencies, and certainly from my perspective as a hiring manager, I don't look at metrics anymore. I look at skills, attributes, expertise. We do need to publish our work, but would I rate somebody who published 5 papers a year over somebody who published 1 really excellent paper a year? I mean, we have to look at quality as well as quantity. I don't really have the answer for you, Giovanni. I think this is a cultural problem. And until we all decide collectively that this is not the way that we are going to measure success, I fear that it will continue a little bit, especially when it comes to things like that. I mean, many of us have been through the fellowship application route. I mean, I fielded in more grants than I've been awarded. So I could give you a whole list of grants I never got because nobody ever shows you those. You kind of have to use the experience of applying for things and getting feedback to just help. Possibly a future grant application. But I think like if you look at the bottom of my slide here, I think this is how people should measure themselves. Like, am I happy? Am I fulfilled? Am I sufficiently challenged in my role? Am I doing interesting things? Am I making a difference? Does my work have impact? Am I working with good people? Is it a supportive environment? Do I have the resources I need? Do I have opportunities to communicate? And I think if an individual, has all of those things, all those research needs met, then they will do excellent science and they will add to these metrics that we count at the top. That's kind of my feeling and is kind of more my philosophy these days. And certainly I would say in some countries, they're moving away from metrics and there's more of a narrative CV rather than a big list of stuff you've done that's now used in assessing fellowship applications. And certainly as a hiring manager in jobs, it's becoming more similar to that. So I think there is becoming a cultural shift, but I think it will take time to move away from these measures and metrics that we traditionally used.
Thank you. Fully agree with your view. So I see Fateme and then Milan.
Yeah, sure. So I have a curiosity because most probably you're also on the committee to decide for grant allocation or let's say like prestigious fellowships that come with the promise of a permanent position especially. And I think like basically like these days, like from what I see, without a very prestigious, let's say, fellowship, like it is almost like impossible to get a permanent job. So I would say like, I mean, not everyone can like stay postdoc forever. I mean, there's also like a time limit for that. So do you see this cultural shift like also happening in the committees of this like very, let's say like top fellowships, or no, like this is something that some employers like for postdoc positions consider and then not like elsewhere? And how do you see the weather and temperature?
So I can only really speak for the UK community because that's where I work and that's kind of the fellowships. I hold one of those fellowships as well, and those are the fellowships that I review. And certainly, and I think unfortunately, there is still this culture that to be competitive for a permanent position, you have to have had some degree of independence. Right. In your research career. This is actually quite unique to astronomy as well, which I find quite interesting.
Sure, right.
We tend to get into permanent positions that are older than another field because of these expectations that have persisted for many decades. But I think it's the if you're looking for somebody to come in a permanent position, they're looking for independence. And very often having held a fellowship, which was your own money, which was you applied for the money and the money went to you to fund your research. That's why universities use that as a marker of independence. Should that change? Again, you have to look at skills, attributes, experience of people. Not everybody who gets a fellowship is necessarily the best candidate for a permanent position. Controversial, but true. It's different.
I mean, also like there are like so many like like there are like so many like also like nominees that I would say like again like there would be like another filter on top of like okay like you got this very like prestigious fellowship, but then like at the same time, like I think like there's also like this like qualities of like nationality, gender, and then like are you a mother or not, and then like I mean there comes like all of these like factors I think like afterwards that even if you're a winner. So I would say like yeah, like unfortunately like what I see is like things are like very competitive, but I mean there can be change too. I mean I don't know if things are going to change, but yeah, we'll see.
I think things are changing, but it's slow.
Right, true.
Like I mentioned, like for the fellowships we have here, the advanced fellowships we have here in the UK, they've moved to what they call a narrative CV. So you do not submit a traditional CV with a big list of stuff you've done. You know, so somebody with a big long CV looks very impressive. The narrative CV is you have to discuss what you've done. No metrics, not numbers of papers, not numbers of talks, but you have to discuss about what you have done to create new knowledge. What have you done to support and mentor others? So you're asked these broader questions, and then you can take bits and bobs from your CV to kind of answer them. And I think that's a good move because
Right.
it does move away from this counting phenomenon. So I think
Absolutely.
that's a positive direction. How much that's being done in other countries, I don't know, but that's certainly the way we're going in the UK.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. I think Milan, you can go next.
Yes.
Hi, Catherine.
Hello.
This is Milan, and thanks, Giovanni, for accepting taking my question. So my question is, thank you for the very nice talk, and it is very helpful for young researcher like us and also for PhD students. And my question is mainly the maintaining your busy schedule, like you maintain it in your own diary, I mean in offline or online mode, or how do you preference things? That's my question basically. So how do you maintain your calendar? It's online or offline? You make a diary or you prefer things, listing things? That's my question. If you could elaborate about it.
Yeah, so I kind of use a mixture of things. So my calendar is now electronic. It didn't used to be, but then I realized there was so many things going in there. I kind of needed to take it online rather than use it offline. I used to carry a diary around with me. You still see some people doing that. I've stopped doing that because I realized that was it was getting too messy. My handwriting is not very good these days. So I do have an online calendar where I put everything that I have to do. I also put deadlines in there as well. But my to-do list I tend to have offline. So I actually I do carry around a notebook. So I have it here. And
Okay.
this is where I just write down everything. So I have like a live list that I update maybe once a week. So I mark things off as they're done. I add things to it that need to be done. And then on that list, I just prioritize. So I say, well, that needs done by this week, or that needs done by tomorrow. And I just kind of have this kind of live to-do list. I did start to try to do that electronically, and then I found that was just another admin job that I had to do, was to update my to-do list. So I kind of prefer to have that in writing, and then I can just scribble and mark things off. And then I also have it in a book, which is a record of everything that I've done if I need. I use my email also as a to-do list. So I'm very, very, very good at keeping my email clean. So at the moment, I think I only have 40 40 emails in my inbox. And I remember sitting with a student one time who shall remain unnamed, and they had something like 3,000 emails in their inbox. And I was like, oh my God, how do you cope? Many of them were unread as well. So I was like, oh, how do you do that?
So one thing is when you return from your holiday, then you can see 3,000 emails. So how do you maintain that, and how do you manage that actually?
That's never happened. I've maybe had 300, but not 3,000,
Okay.
thankfully. Thankfully, of those 300 emails, many of them are just mailing lists. They're easy to clean out, but I will sit there probably for an hour or an hour and a half and just clean it all out. And what I do is I delete things that don't matter, and I read things that do, and I file them away. very quickly. So I have a lot of folders and everything is filed away into a folder. My email is also offline. I store it offline, so I have access to it offline. So if I need to look for an email that I had before, I don't need to be on the internet. I can actually access all of that offline as well. And that's really, really useful sometimes, because I'll think to myself, I'm on a plane, I got an email about that. Yeah. And I can look it up and I have access to it. So I think that email is one of these things we have to deal with these days. And I find it much less stressful if I just keep on top of it and make sure that I've got a clean inbox, and the only things that are in my inbox are things I haven't actioned yet, things I need to do something.
Okay. Thank you. And my last question, if I have time, and then how do you manage reading papers in very short time? Lots of papers, lots of work going on. So paper could be very long, right? What things have been done. So how do you suggest it should be managed in a very short time to track all the works which is published recently, day by day?
So this is where I still check archive every day. That's the first thing I do in the morning. Well, the first thing I do is check email, make sure there's nothing too urgent to deal with. Then the next thing I'll do is open up archive and have a look through what papers are on there. I only read papers in a lot of detail now when I need to. But what I do is I kind of read the abstract, read the titles, and kind of hopefully have a little flash of recognition of that paper in the future. I use reference managers, Zotero, where I pull everything across as well. So I have everything offline. But it is true, probably reading papers and really, having a deep understanding of the current literature is something as a manager you tend to lose. I have a shallow understanding of the literature, but I certainly don't have as deep an understanding as I used to. But when I need to, I will take the time to do that reading. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Many thanks.
Thank you, Milan.
So since time is running, I think we can have just last quick question from Tina.
Hello, from me as well, and thank you for this excellent presentation, the case story to share. My question is a little bit more personal, so maybe, if you don't have to answer, you don't have to, I don't know if it is allowed. My question would be that, do you actually have kids? Do you have kids, and in which stage in your career you had them, and was it challenging or not?
So I haven't had kids, no, and I'm happy to answer that question. It's quite rare. I'm a rarity. I've got to the age now where I'm probably one of the only people of my career stage that has not had kids. So indeed, I don't have those added pressures, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's very different if you are a mother or a father in academia. But again, I think knowing, and we don't have to overwork, and we don't have to work silly hours and weekends and evenings to be successful. We can do this by keeping regular working hours, maybe not regular working patterns, because that won't work for everyone, but certainly regular working hours, I think, and of course that is all commensurate with better family life and more time with your family as well.
Thank you very much, Catherine, also for this personal note. So I think we reached the end of this seminar. Let's thank Catherine once again. If you want to join us next week, we will have the last seminar of this series. Thank you very much also to all of you for participating. Ciao.
Yeah, see you next time, everyone. Take care. Bye.